When you know yourself deeply, you become untouchable to manipulation because toxic people thrive on one thing: confusion. They want you to doubt your thoughts, your choices, your values. They want you to second guess yourself so that they can step in and rewrite your reality. But when you truly know who you are, when you've taken the time to define your values, your principles, and your boundaries, you carry a sense of certainty that no one can twist. Think about it. When you walk into a room knowing what you stand for, knowing what you believe, no one can shake you with their lies, no one can bend you with their guilt tactics, no one can distort the truth of who you are. This is why self-awareness is not just some nice idea, it's your armor. The person who knows themselves becomes a fortress, a structure too strong to be broken down by emotional games. Knowing yourself is not about perfection. It's about clarity. Toxic people depend on the fact that you will not see your own worth, that you will forget your strengths, that you will question your instincts. When you don't know yourself, you become like clay in their hands. They can mold you, reshape you, convince you that their version of you is the truth. And this is exactly how people get trapped in manipulative cycles. They stop trusting their inner voice. But the moment you choose to deeply understand yourself, you cut off their influence. You stop being someone who is easily swayed, easily pressured, easily tripped. You stop being clay and become stone, solid, unmoving, impossible to bend into their narrative. It starts with asking yourself hard questions. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you believe when no one is pressuring you to change? What do you want in your life when you strip away the opinions of others? These questions anchor you, because once you know your own answers, no manipulator can supply their own. When they tell you that you're selfish, but you know your heart is rooted in honesty, you don't flinch. When they tell you you're weak, but you've lived through storms they'll never know, you don't break. When they tell you that you can't make it without them, but you've already proven to yourself that you can stand alone, you don't fall. This is the power of self-knowledge. It becomes a shield against every toxic tactic thrown your way. But here's the reality. Knowing yourself deeply isn't easy. It takes work. It means sitting with your past, facing your mistakes, owning your insecurities, and refusing to run from your shadows. Toxic people exploit the parts of you that you haven't accepted. If you're insecure about your worth, they'll remind you of it. If you're ashamed of your past, they'll throw it in your face. If you're afraid of being abandoned, they'll hold that fear over your head. But when you do the work of embracing who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, there is nothing left for them to use. They can't weaponize what you've already claimed. That is why true self-knowledge is the end of manipulation. Every time you look in the mirror and accept yourself, you take away a tool from the manipulator's hands. Every time you affirm your values and stand on them, you take away their power to twist your decisions. Every time you remind yourself of your worth, you silence their attempts to convince you that you're nothing without them. This is how you build a life where toxic people can't touch you. Not because they don't try, but because you've built such a strong foundation that their tricks slide right off. And make no mistake, they will test you. They will push to see if you really know yourself. If you really believe in your own worth. They'll whisper lies, they'll use guilt, they'll try to break you. But when you know yourself, you see through it. You see the game for what it is, and instead of getting pulled in, you stay grounded. You don't need to fight, you don't need to prove, you don't need to explain. You just stand in who you are, and their manipulation falls flat. This is why your greatest weapon against toxic people is not anger, not revenge, not proving them wrong. Your greatest weapon is clarity, clarity of self. When you walk in that clarity, no one can define you, no one can manipulate you, no one can control you. And toxic people hate that. They hate it because their survival depends on your confusion. The day you choose self-awareness is the day you choose freedom. And when you are free, you are powerful beyond anything they can reach. When you stop reacting on impulse and start controlling your reactions, you take away the very weapon toxic people count on. Manipulators are not powerful because they're smarter than you or stronger than you. They're powerful because they know how to push buttons. They know exactly what words to use to spark your anger, your guilt, or your insecurity. They rely on the fact that you'll snap, that you'll over-explain, that you'll defend yourself until you're drained. But the moment you master your reactions, their control vanishes. Imagine someone throwing bait in front of you every day, waiting for you to bite. When you stop biting, the bait loses its purpose. That's what happens when you stop reacting the way they expect. You strip them of their fuel. Controlling your reaction doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It doesn't mean you become cold or detached. It means you become intentional. You pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, what outcome do I want in this moment? Toxic people want chaos, so when you react with calm, you deny them their victory. They want you on the defensive, so when you stay steady, you shift the power back to yourself. They want you flustered, so when you respond with clarity, you remind them that you cannot be shaken. The ability to control your reaction is like holding a mirror up to them. It shows them their tactics don't work anymore. And when they realize that, they start losing interest in trying to manipulate you. Think about the times you've given a toxic person exactly what they wanted. Your outrage, your tears, your endless explanations. Did it ever bring peace? No, because it was never about resolution. It was always about control. But what happens when you give them silence instead of shouting? What happens when you give them stillness instead of panic? What happens when you give them a measured response instead of an emotional explosion? You take away the satisfaction they feed on. You show them that you're no longer their puppet, that you don't dance to their strings anymore. This is not weakness. It's one of the strongest forms of power, and here's the truth. Controlling your reaction is not for them, it's for you. When you let toxic people provoke you, you give them space in your mind and heart that they don't deserve. You carry their poison with you long after the moment has passed. But when you control your response, you keep your peace intact. You walk away lighter. You protect your energy instead of wasting it on someone who thrives on draining it. This is how you reclaim control over your life. By refusing to hand it over every time someone presses a button. Your reaction is your power, and the moment you choose to master it, you take that power back. There will always be tests. Toxic people will raise their voice to get you to raise yours. They'll throw insults to see if you'll defend yourself endlessly. They'll play the victim to trigger your guilt. But if you've trained yourself to respond instead of react, you'll see the manipulation as clear as day. You'll see that none of it is about you. It's about them trying to control you. And when you know that, you can choose to stay calm, to keep your words short, to keep your actions firm. You'll find that silence can be louder than screaming, and stillness can be stronger than chaos. That's the kind of control they cannot compete with. Mastering your reaction also teaches toxic people something important. Access to you is a privilege. When you no longer react to every jab, every guilt trip, every trap they set, they realize they don't have easy access to your emotions anymore. They realize they can't manipulate you like they used to. And for many of them, that becomes their breaking point. Because manipulators don't want relationships built on respect, they want control. If they can't control you, they lose interest. And that's when you win, not by fighting them, but by rising above the game they play. So when you're in the presence of someone toxic, remember this: your reaction is not theirs to own. It belongs to you. Guard it. Protect it. Use it wisely. Because every time you respond with control instead of chaos, with calm instead of fury, with silence instead of defensiveness, you're teaching them a lesson they hate to learn. That you are no longer their easy target. You've grown, you've risen, and you've reclaimed the part of yourself they once held in their grip. That is how you become untouchable. Detaching emotionally from the drama toxic people create is one of the most liberating choices you can ever make, because manipulation thrives where emotion runs unchecked. Toxic people are masters of stirring chaos. They poke at your wounds, they twist your words, they create storms that are designed to suck you in. And the moment you step into that storm, you're already playing their game. They know how to make you feel guilty, how to make you feel angry, how to make you feel like you're the problem. But when you detach emotionally, when you learn to step back and observe instead of absorb, suddenly their chaos has no effect on you. You don't take the bait. You don't let their drama become your emotional burden. You simply see it for what it is, a trap meant to pull you down to their level. When you are emotionally tied to their drama, you become reactive. You feel the need to explain, defend, justify, or even fix them. And in that moment, you're handing over your peace and your energy to someone who doesn't deserve it. Detachment isn't about being heartless. It's about protecting your heart from people who exploit it. It's saying, I care about myself enough not to drown in your storm. It's about understanding that their problems are not your problems. Their chaos is not your chaos, and their drama is not yours to manage. That separation is what gives you the strength to see clearly. When you're not emotionally entangled, you can recognize the patterns, the manipulation tactics, and the mind games. You begin to see the cycle for what it is, and once you see it, you can break it. Detaching emotionally means you stop reacting to every jab and accusation. If they call you selfish, you don't rush to prove your generosity. If they play the victim, you don't rush to rescue them. If they twist the story, you don't waste hours defending yourself. Instead, you allow their words to fall flat because you no longer give them power. This silence, this emotional distance is not weakness. It's strength. It's refusing to let someone else dictate how you feel about yourself. Toxic people crave control, and control only works when you care about their approval or their opinion. When you emotionally detach, their approval stops mattering, their judgment stops stinging, and their manipulation loses its hold. You rise above the noise because you no longer feed it with your energy. Think about how much peace you've lost in the past because you got pulled into unnecessary drama. Sleepless nights spent replaying arguments. Days ruined because someone sent a manipulative message. Hours wasted explaining yourself to someone who never intended to listen. All of that is energy stolen. And it was stolen because you stayed emotionally tied to their games. Now imagine what happens when you cut that cord. Suddenly, their words are just words, their games are just games, and you are free. You don't carry their chaos with you into tomorrow. You don't let their negativity cloud your mind or poison your mood. Detachment is freedom. It's choosing to keep your peace no matter how loud their drama gets. And here's the thing. They hate it when you detach emotionally. They hate it because drama is their weapon. And when it doesn't work, they feel powerless. They'll try harder at first. They'll provoke, they'll escalate. They'll throw everything at you to see if they can pull you back in. But if you remain steady, if you refuse to engage, if you continue to detach, they eventually realize you're no longer available to play their game. And that's when the dynamic shifts. Because a toxic person can only manipulate someone who gives them access. And detachment is the ultimate lock. It says, I hear you, but I don't absorb you. I see you, but I don't let you inside. That's when you become someone they cannot manipulate. Detachment also gives you perspective. When you're not drowning in their drama, you start to notice things you couldn't see before. You notice how often they play the victim, how often they twist reality, how often they blame others while avoiding accountability. You see their patterns clearly because you're not emotionally fogged by guilt or anger. And once you see those patterns, you can make better choices. You can decide when to walk away, when to set a boundary, and when to cut ties completely. Emotional distance allows you to make decisions with clarity rather than with desperation. It puts you back in control. This doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. Of course you will. You're human. But detachment means you no longer allow those emotions to be controlled by someone else's manipulation. You feel anger, but you don't lash out. You feel sadness, but you don't let it trap you in guilt. You feel compassion, but you don't let it turn into enabling. You stay aware of your emotions, but you don't let them drag you into the pit of someone else's chaos. That's what makes you untouchable. Toxic people can scream, lie, twist, and provoke, but if you are emotionally detached, you remain unshaken. So when you find yourself in the presence of toxic people, remind yourself that detachment is not cruelty, it's self-respect. You are not here to be their emotional sponge. You are not here to fix them or absorb their pain. You are here to protect your energy, your peace, and your future. By detaching emotionally, you stop being controlled by their games and start living on your own terms. That is how you take back control. That is how you become the person toxic people cannot manipulate. Setting clear boundaries and enforcing them is one of the most powerful shields you can build against toxic people. Because boundaries are not just rules you put in place for others. They are standards you set for yourself about what you will and will not allow in your life. Toxic people push, they test, they exploit the kindness of those who never draw a line, and they thrive where there are no limits. They will keep taking as long as you keep giving. They will keep disrespecting as long as you keep tolerating, and they will keep manipulating as long as you keep leaving the door open. The moment you set boundaries, everything changes, because it tells them that the days of free access to your energy, your time, and your peace are over. A boundary is not about controlling someone else. It's about controlling yourself. It's about saying, This is how I expect to be treated, and if you can't respect that, then you don't get access to me. Boundaries are not suggestions, they are non-negotiables. Toxic people hate them because boundaries strip them of their greatest weapon, control. When you stand firm, when you refuse to bend under pressure, when you make it clear that you won't tolerate disrespect, their games stop working. They can lie, guilt trip, shout, or play the victim, but none of it matters if you don't budge. That's why enforcement is critical. A boundary without enforcement is just a wish, and toxic people are quick to test whether you actually mean what you say. If you don't follow through, they will see the weakness and they will exploit it. But if you enforce your boundaries every single time, you become someone they cannot move. Think of it like locking the doors to your house. You don't just say you want privacy. You make sure the door is locked. And if someone tries to barge in, you stop them. Boundaries work the same way. It's not enough to say, I don't want to be spoken to disrespectfully. You must follow through by refusing to engage when someone disrespects you. It's not enough to say, I can't always be available. You must enforce that by not dropping everything the second someone demands your time. And it's not enough to say, I won't tolerate manipulation. You must enforce it by stepping away the moment manipulation starts. Enforcement is what gives boundaries power, and power is what toxic people fear. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they fear being seen as rude, selfish, or unkind. That hesitation is exactly what toxic people rely on. They know you don't want to upset anyone, so they keep pushing. But boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are clarity. They are a declaration of self-respect, and anyone who respects you will respect them. Toxic people are the only ones who will resist your boundaries, because boundaries expose their inability to control you. And when you enforce them, when you stand by them consistently, you send a message louder than words. I value myself enough not to let you mistreat me. That message is what makes them back off, because they realize manipulation won't work on someone who knows their worth. Setting boundaries also creates structure in your life. It tells you who belongs close to you and who needs distance. Boundaries make relationships healthier because they filter out the people who drain you and leave room for the ones who uplift you. When you set them, you are saying to the world, I choose peace over chaos, respect over disrespect, and strength over weakness. That kind of clarity makes you harder to exploit because you stop living at the mercy of others. Toxic people lose their grip the second you stop letting them decide how much of yourself you give away. Enforcement doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's as simple as silence. You don't need to explain your boundaries over and over to someone who refuses to respect them. You show them. You show them by not responding to disrespect. You show them by walking away from manipulation. You show them by keeping your distance when they refuse to change. Silence can be the strongest enforcement of all, because it communicates that your peace matters more than their drama. The moment they realize they cannot pull you back in, they start to lose their power over you. Boundaries are also about consistency. If you set a limit one day but abandon it the next, you send mixed signals. Toxic people thrive on mixed signals because it gives them room to push harder. That's why you must be unwavering. Every time you enforce a boundary, you reinforce your strength. Every time you say no and mean it, you teach them that access to you is a privilege, not a right. And every time you choose to walk away from chaos instead of engaging with it, you remind yourself that you are in control. Over time, this consistency doesn't just protect you from toxic people. It transforms you into someone they cannot manipulate because your standards are unshakable. The truth is, toxic people will always test your limits. They will always see how far they can go. But the stronger your boundaries, the faster they realize they have no power. And here's the beauty of it. Once they realize they can't manipulate you, many will naturally fall away. They'll seek out someone else who hasn't built those walls, because they know they won't win with you. And those who stay, those who truly respect you, will adapt to your boundaries because respect recognizes respect. Either way, you win. You either eliminate the toxic influence, or you transform the dynamic into one where you are no longer exploited. So set your boundaries and, more importantly, enforce them. Do it without guilt, without apology, without hesitation. Every time you stand firm, you're teaching people how to treat you, and you're teaching yourself that your peace is worth protecting. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about keeping yourself whole. They are the invisible armor that shields you from manipulation. the lines that remind others that you are not to be used, and the strength that makes toxic people fear you. When you enforce them, you stop being an easy target. You become the person who cannot be manipulated because your standards are higher than their games. Recognizing manipulation tactics and refusing to engage with them is one of the most important skills you can develop if you want to be untouchable in the face of toxic people, because manipulation thrives in silence and confusion. Manipulators survive by twisting words, planting doubt, and pulling emotional strings so subtly that many people don't even realize what's happening until they're drained. The first step to breaking free is awareness, seeing their tactics for what they are. Once you see clearly, the spell is broken, because their tricks only work when you believe them. And the second step is refusal. Refusing to participate in the game they're playing, refusing to feed their need for control, and refusing to hand over your peace just to avoid conflict. Manipulation can take many forms. It might be guilt tripping, where someone makes you feel responsible for their happiness or disappointment. It might be gaslighting, where they deny your reality and twist facts until you question your memory or even your sanity. It might be silent treatment, where they withdraw attention to punish you until you bend to their will. It might be flattery, where they shower you with praise to lower your guard before they ask for something. It might be playing the victim, where they dramatize their suffering to distract you from their wrongdoing and force your sympathy. Toxic people are skilled at switching between these tactics depending on what will work in the moment. They learn your weaknesses, your empathy, your fears, and they press on them until you give in. The danger is that many people internalize these tactics without realizing it. You start to think, maybe you are selfish, maybe you are too sensitive, maybe you owe them more than you can give. That's the design of manipulation. It rewrites your thinking so that you hand over your power willingly. But once you understand the playbook, you stop falling for it. You stop believing the guilt trips because you recognize them as control, not care. You stop questioning your reality because you know gaslighting is about distortion, not truth. You stop letting flattery blind you because you realize genuine respect doesn't come with strings attached. Awareness is the light that dissolves the shadow, and toxic people can't operate in the light, but awareness alone isn't enough. You must also refuse to engage. Refusal doesn't mean shouting, arguing, or proving your point. In fact, arguing with a manipulator only strengthens them because it shows they've hooked you emotionally. Refusal means staying calm, centered, and unmovable. It means not giving them the reaction they want. They thrive on your defensiveness, your explanations, your justifications, because every word you give them is fuel. Refusal looks like silence when they guilt trip you. It looks like repeating the truth calmly when they gaslight you without being dragged into circles of argument. It looks like holding your boundary when they withdraw attention instead of running after them. Refusal is not passive, it is strength in stillness. It is choosing not to let their tactics dictate your behavior. When you stop engaging, something powerful happens. Manipulators start to lose control. They realize their tools don't work on you anymore. They can't hook you with guilt, because you won't carry blame that isn't yours. They can't twist your reality, because you trust your own mind more than their words. They can't pull you in with silence, because you're comfortable with your own company. They can't win your loyalty with flattery, because you don't mistake words for integrity. They can't play the victim because you see through the performance. They may double down at first, trying harder to break you, but when they see their tactics fail, they begin to retreat, because a manipulator cannot thrive where there is no audience. Refusing to engage also requires emotional control. Manipulation is designed to make you react, to make you angry, guilty, or desperate to explain yourself. But when you control your emotions, you control the outcome. If they raise their voice, you keep yours calm. If they twist the facts, you state yours once and then stop explaining. If they sulk, you don't rush to fix it. This calm, firm energy disarms manipulation because it leaves no room for escalation. Toxic people expect you to bend, to chase, to over-explain, but when you don't, they are left powerless. They cannot control someone who refuses to give them the reaction they seek. The more you practice recognizing manipulation, the faster you catch it. At first, you may only realize it after the fact, when you're already drained. But over time, you begin to notice it in the moment. You hear the guilt trip for what it is. You spot the gaslighting the moment the words leave their mouth. You see the pattern instead of the performance. That awareness gives you a choice. You can walk away, disengage, or stand firm instead of falling into the trap. Every time you refuse to engage, you build a stronger shield. You become harder to exploit, harder to guilt, harder to control, and that's exactly what makes toxic people fear you. It's also important to remember that refusing to engage doesn't mean you lack compassion. You can care for someone and still refuse to let them manipulate you. Compassion is not compliance, and empathy is not weakness. In fact, true compassion sometimes means holding people accountable instead of enabling their behavior. Manipulators may accuse you of being cold, selfish, or unkind when you stop playing their game, but that's just another tactic. The truth is, refusing manipulation is an act of strength, of self-respect, and even of honesty, because you are choosing truth over illusion. So when you face manipulation, see it, name it, and step away from it. Do not fight with it, do not feed it, do not let it drag you into its cycle. Every time you recognize and refuse, you remind yourself that your peace is not negotiable. Toxic people cannot manipulate someone who refuses to be moved by their tricks, someone who knows their own worth, someone who does not need validation or approval to stand firm. That person is you. Once you decide that no tactic is powerful enough to shake your sense of self, and when you live in that power, you become untouchable to those who once thrived on your vulnerability. Strengthening emotional intelligence to detect hidden motives is one of the most valuable skills you can ever build, because toxic people rarely show their intentions openly. They don't walk into your life and declare they want to control you, drain you, or use you. They disguise their motives behind charm, kindness, or sympathy. They put on a mask to appear safe, trustworthy, even generous, but behind that mask, there is usually a personal agenda. And if you don't sharpen your ability to read people beyond their words, you will fall for the performance every single time. Emotional intelligence allows you to see what's not being said, to sense the energy behind the words, to catch the contradiction between how someone speaks and how they act. It is your inner radar, your ability to detect the gap between appearance and reality. Toxic people are skilled actors. They know how to tell you what you want to hear. They can mirror your values, your desires, and even your pain to create a false sense of connection. If you value honesty, they'll pretend to be honest. If you value vulnerability, they'll fake their wounds. If you crave validation, they'll shower you with compliments. But if you pay attention with emotional intelligence, you'll notice something doesn't line up. Their words don't match their behavior. Their story changes depending on who's listening. Or their kindness seems conditional. Emotional intelligence allows you to spot those inconsistencies because it trains you to see the whole picture rather than getting lost in surface details. One of the strongest aspects of emotional intelligence is the ability to read emotional patterns, not isolated actions. Toxic people can perform goodness in the short term, but they can't maintain consistency. Over time, you will notice that their kindness comes only when they need something. Their compliments arrive before a request. Their vulnerability surfaces when they want sympathy, but disappears when you need support. Emotional intelligence is the skill of noticing these repeated patterns and connecting the dots. When you stop looking at isolated moments and start seeing the cycle, you realize the motive isn't care, it's control. It isn't love, it's leverage. Another part of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Toxic people are experts at exploiting your blind spots. If you're unaware of your own needs and weaknesses, they'll use them against you. If you crave approval, they'll withhold it to make you chase. If you hate conflict, they'll push you with passive aggression until you give in. If you fear abandonment, they'll threaten to walk away to keep you hooked. But when you develop self-awareness, you recognize your own triggers before they can use them. You see how your emotions react, and instead of being pulled by them, you take control. That self-mastery makes it almost impossible for someone to manipulate you because you are no longer ruled by unconscious needs. You see clearly what belongs to you and what belongs to them. Emotional intelligence also helps you interpret body language and tone, the hidden communication beyond words. Toxic people may say, "I support you," but their tone is dismissive or their body language is closed off. They may say, "I'm fine," but their silence screams resentment. They may smile at you, but the energy feels heavy. Many people ignore these signals because they don't trust their instincts, but emotional intelligence teaches you to honor those gut feelings. Your body often senses what your mind tries to rationalize away. That uneasy feeling you get when someone is lying or hiding something is real, and it's your responsibility to listen to it. Developing emotional intelligence requires slowing down your reactions. Manipulators often count on you to respond quickly, to defend yourself, to explain, to reassure them. But when you pause, observe, and listen carefully, you start to hear the truth underneath the words. You notice the shift in their tone, the slip in their story, the way they avoid direct answers. Toxic motives reveal themselves in those small cracks, but only if you're patient enough to watch. Silence becomes a tool because people often expose themselves when you give them space. They keep talking, and eventually the mask slips. If you're quiet and observant, you won't miss it. Another key part of emotional intelligence is empathy, but not blind empathy. Manipulators count on your kindness and compassion to get what they want. They'll exaggerate their suffering or play the victim, hoping you'll rush in to fix or comfort them. But true empathy is about understanding without losing perspective. You can care for someone and still recognize when their pain is being used as a weapon. Emotional intelligence balances compassion with discernment. You see their humanity, but you also see their choices. You can say, "I understand you're hurting, but that doesn't excuse how you're treating me." That balance prevents you from being exploited in the name of empathy. Strengthening emotional intelligence is also about practicing detachment, not emotional coldness, but the ability to step outside of the moment and see the bigger picture. When you're caught in the heat of manipulation, emotions cloud your vision. But if you step back mentally and ask yourself, what is really happening here? What are they trying to gain? What is their pattern? You'll find the clarity that toxic people hope you never reach. Detachment gives you perspective, and perspective breaks manipulation. The more you strengthen emotional intelligence, the less you get trapped in hidden motives because you're no longer just hearing what people say. You're watching how they move, how they treat others, how consistent they are over time. You trust your instincts when something feels off instead of silencing them. You recognize your own emotional buttons and refuse to let anyone push them for control. And you learn to separate compassion from compliance, caring for people without handing them power over you. Toxic people can manipulate words, but they can't fake consistency. They can't control your self-awareness, and they can't hide from your ability to see patterns. Emotional intelligence shines a light on all the shadows they operate in, and once the light is on, the game is over. Building unshakable confidence that blocks psychological control is not about arrogance or pretending you're stronger than you are. It's about cultivating such a deep sense of self-worth that no one's manipulation can find a way in. Toxic people thrive on insecurity. They feed on doubt, hesitation, and fear. They look for cracks in your self-belief because that's where their words and tactics take root. When you don't trust yourself, you are easier to control. When you are uncertain of your value, you are quicker to seek validation from those who don't deserve to give it. But when you build real, unshakable confidence, toxic people lose their favorite weapon because they cannot convince you that you are less than what you know yourself to be. Confidence is not a performance. It's not loud words or aggressive behavior to prove strength. Real confidence is quiet and steady. It's the calm knowing of who you are, what you stand for, and what you will not tolerate. This kind of confidence creates boundaries without you even having to announce them. It shows in how you walk, how you carry yourself, how you listen without rushing to defend, how you say no without guilt. Toxic people notice this immediately because it tells them you are not someone who can be easily swayed. They may still attempt their usual tactics: flattery, guilt, intimidation. But each one falls flat against someone who does not need approval to stand tall. Unshakable confidence starts with knowing your values. If you don't know what matters most to you, someone else will decide for you. Manipulators will twist your focus toward what benefits them. But if you are clear on your values, whether that's integrity, honesty, freedom, respect, no one can push you off your center. You measure their words and actions against your values, and when they don't match, you see it instantly. Confidence is rooted in alignment between who you are and how you live. That alignment makes it much harder for toxic people to rewrite your reality because you already know the truth. You stand on. Another layer of confidence is trusting your own judgment. Manipulators create doubt by questioning your memory, twisting facts, or making you second-guess yourself. If you are unsure of your own perception, they can convince you of almost anything. But if you have cultivated the confidence to trust your instincts and honor your perspective, their attempts fall short. You don't waste energy arguing with them, because you don't need external validation to believe what you know. That inner certainty is like armor. They can throw words at you, but they don't penetrate because you no longer outsource your reality to someone else. Confidence also grows when you practice resilience in the face of failure and rejection. Toxic people weaponize your fear of being wrong or unwanted. They may say things like, "No one else will put up with you," or "You're nothing without me." If you are fragile, those words can shatter you. But if you've faced setbacks and still risen, if you've been rejected and still kept going, if you've failed and still rebuilt, you develop proof that you are capable of surviving without their approval. That history of resilience creates confidence not built on perfection, but on persistence. Toxic people can't control someone who knows they will be fine even if others disapprove or abandon them. Unshakable confidence is also about body language and energy. Manipulators read your posture, your tone, your reactions. If you shrink, stutter, or avoid eye contact, they sense insecurity and push harder. But when you hold yourself upright, when your tone is steady, when you meet their eyes calmly without aggression, you send a signal that you are not intimidated. This doesn't mean you have to fight. It means you stand in your presence fully. Toxic people thrive on fear, but confidence communicates silently that there is no fear to exploit. And when fear isn't present, their strategies lose power. Another powerful aspect of confidence is the ability to say no without explanation. Toxic people rely on your guilt and your need to justify yourself. They push until you give in. But a confident no is unshakable. It doesn't come with endless excuses or apologies. It is firm, respectful, and final. When you can say no without fear of losing love, approval, or connection, you are unbreakable to manipulators. They realize they can't control you with pressure, and eventually they stop trying. Confidence teaches you that your worth does not come from compliance. It comes from living true to yourself. Unshakable confidence also includes emotional regulation. Manipulators try to control you by provoking reactions. They push buttons, trigger anger, or create chaos to make you lose composure. But when your confidence is strong, you don't let them dictate your state. You breathe, you pause, you choose your response. You know that self-control is the highest form of strength. While they are trying to pull you into a storm, you remain grounded. That calmness unsettles toxic people because they cannot dominate someone who won't play their game. Confidence is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Finally, true confidence doesn't mean you never feel doubt. It means doubt doesn't control you. It doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means fear doesn't decide for you. Confidence is choosing to stand firm even when insecurity whispers. It's reminding yourself of your worth even when others try to diminish it. It's walking away from manipulation not because you don't feel the pull, but because you choose your freedom over their control. This is what makes it unshakable. It's not that you never get tested. It's that you've trained yourself to stand tall no matter the test. When you build this kind of confidence, toxic people may try their usual tricks, but they quickly realize you are not someone they can bend. They cannot convince you you're less than what you know yourself to be. They cannot shake your clarity, and they cannot make you chase approval you don't need. Confidence creates a shield they can't penetrate. It doesn't just protect you. It sends a message that you are a person who stands on solid ground, and that ground is not available for manipulation. Creating a mindset of detachment that neutralizes toxic influence is about freeing yourself from the emotional hooks that manipulators rely on. Toxic people don't always need control over your actions at first. What they want is control over your emotions, because emotions are the fastest path to influencing your behavior. When you react with anger, guilt, desperation, or fear, they know exactly which buttons to press the next time. But when you cultivate detachment, you take away their power to provoke you. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop giving toxic people the privilege of deciding how you feel inside. It means you can engage with the world without letting other people's moods, opinions, or games dictate your state of mind. That kind of mental freedom is like poison to a manipulator because they can't latch onto what they cannot move. Detachment begins with recognizing that other people's behavior is a reflection of them, not you. Manipulators will try to convince you that you are the cause of their anger, their sadness, their disappointment. They'll say things like, "You made me do this," or "If you love me, This is a trap designed to link your emotions to their approval. Detachment breaks this link by reminding you that their reactions belong to them. You are responsible for your choices and your integrity, but you are not responsible for their mood swings or manipulative stories. Once you internalize this, you no longer feel compelled to fix them or chase their validation. You see their behavior as data, not as a judgment on your worth. One of the most powerful tools of detachment is learning to observe rather than absorb. When you absorb, you internalize every insult, every tone, every gesture, and it sticks to you like glue. When you observe, you notice their tactics, but you don't take them in. It's like watching a storm through a window. You see the lightning, hear the thunder, but you're safe inside. Manipulators lose their grip when you step into the observer's role because they thrive on your immediate reactions. The moment you stop giving them the emotional fireworks they seek, they start to lose interest. You deny them the satisfaction of seeing you unravel. Detachment also requires shifting from reactive thinking to intentional thinking. Toxic people are masters at pulling you into a reactive state where you say things in anger, defend yourself endlessly, or change your behavior out of guilt. In that reactive state, they are in control. Detachment flips the script by teaching you to pause before responding, to create a gap between stimulus and action. In that gap, you choose your words and your moves instead of letting them choose for you. This single skill, pausing before reacting, can neutralize most manipulation because it deprives toxic people of the instant feedback loop they rely on. Another layer of detachment is letting go of the need to win every battle with a manipulator. Toxic people bait you into arguments, debates, and endless cycles of proving yourself. They don't seek truth, they seek control. If you stay attached to the idea of making them understand, you fall into their trap. Detachment means releasing the urge to convince them or change them. You don't need to prove your worth or your perspective to someone who is committed to twisting it. Your energy is better spent walking away or staying firm in silence. Detachment reminds you that not every fight deserves your fire, and sometimes the strongest response is no response. Emotional detachment also involves protecting your sense of self from being fused with their approval or rejection. Manipulators want you to crave their validation because that gives them leverage. When you detach, you stop hanging your self-worth on whether they praise or criticize you. Their compliments don't inflate you, and their insults don't deflate you. You learn to stay steady regardless of how they swing. This neutrality frustrates toxic people because they can't dangle rewards or threats to pull you in. You are no longer on their string. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. You can still care for people, but you stop allowing that care to enslave you. You realize that love without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. You can wish someone well and still refuse to let them poison your peace. Detachment makes room for compassion without codependence. You understand that their manipulation is their problem to solve, not your responsibility to carry. This balanced stance confuses manipulators because they expect you to either explode in anger or collapse in guilt. Instead, you remain centered, calm, and unmovable. Practical ways to build detachment include mindfulness, journaling, and emotional awareness. When you notice your triggers in real time, you reclaim choice. When you journal your thoughts, you create distance between you and the emotional chaos. When you practice mindfulness, you strengthen the ability to witness without being consumed. Each practice trains your mind to stay grounded instead of pulled into their vortex. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to recognize manipulation before it takes root. Over time, detachment becomes less of a conscious effort and more of a natural state. You simply stop giving manipulators a doorway into your emotions. The ultimate power of detachment is that it shifts the dynamic completely. Toxic people thrive in environments where others are emotionally dependent, easily provoked, or desperate for approval. When you detach, you remove yourself from that cycle. You are no longer a puppet they can control with strings of guilt or fear. You stand in your own sovereignty, unmoved by their storms. They may rant, guilt trip, or try every tactic in their playbook, but none of it sticks. And when they realize their games no longer work, they often retreat because manipulators have no interest in people they cannot control. Detachment is not just protection, it's liberation.